All right, guys, so I think that we're almost all here as far as the attendees, so let's just get started. So thank you for joining. We're going to go over the Creo Interactive Surface Design Extension, ISDX, presented by Boundary Systems. The agenda for today, so we'll review the benefits of ISDX. We'll do a brief introduction of myself and the company. And the topics that we'll go over are the ISDX environment, curve and surface creation, parametric control of your ISDX surfaces, and modeling in Freestyle. And then at the end, we'll also do some Q&A. My name is Bill. I am an industrial designer, and I focus in industrial design and rendering. Boundary Systems is a tech leader. We are partners with PTC, eTraj, and other tech companies. We are one of the 16 fastest growing private companies in Cleveland, and we are a part of the PDSVISION group of global companies. Some capabilities of ours include PLM, CAD design and consulting, simulation, and product development. We have been mentioned in industry awards for the Inc. 5000, Weatherhead 100, and some major accreditations of ours are the PTC Platinum Partnership, Windchill Certified Implementer, the PTC Preferred Service Provider, and we are PTC authorized and certified training partners for Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, and Arbortext. Some software solutions that we provide, of course, starting off with PTC, so we cover Creo, Simulate, any of the PTC group of software solutions. Some others are the Tacton, Moldex 3D, Xformation, eTraj, ITI, CWCAD, Keyshot, Sigmaxim, and Simerix. So just a brief overview of what we're going to cover once again. So we'll cover the ISDX environment. We'll look at curve and surface creation. It will also take a look at parametric control of the ISDX surfaces that you create in the ISDX environment. Then we'll also, at the very end, take a look at modeling in the Freestyle environment. So, just to start off with, what is ISDX and why ISDX? ISDX combines the power of parametric modeling with flexibility of freeform surfacing. It also allows you to create complex freeform curves and surfaces directly within a single intuitive and interactive environment. And it's perfect for designers and those who need a more fluid and less restrictive environment. So, for those people that are more on the artsy, fartsy, design side of things, if you're used to using Alias, Rhino, this is a perfect environment for you where it's more free form and fluid, and the interface is really easy to kind of pick up and use if you've used those other programs. So the very first topic that we'll cover is the ISDX environment. So we'll take a look at the style tree that's very close to the modeling tree in Creo, or the feature tree in Creo. We'll look at the different tool groups, shortcuts, the 4-view layout, and the active plane. So let's go right into that demo. Okay, so here we are. So you see we have this flashlight model. We're going to go right to the style environment. So let's find style 2, the style 2 feature. And you can see that, the nice thing about Freestyle, or I'm sorry, ISDX, is that, it's really just one feature within the modeling tree, right? So within that one feature, there could be a multitude of curves, surfaces. So, you're not really, the good thing about it is that it actually keeps your model tree pretty clean. So if you create a curve or a surface, it's not going to show up in the model tree. It'll be within that one style feature. So let's go into style 2. All right, so the very first thing that we want to take a look at is the style tree. So just like we mentioned, you have the model tree. Within the ISDX environment, you have the style tree. So whenever you create a curve or a surface, it's going to be there in that style tree. If you want to edit that surface, if you click on a surface or a curve, for example, you get that shortcut menu, and then from there you can go to edit, and then create your edits within that feature. So But another good thing that's within the ISDX environment is that we have this 4-view layout. So, in the normal Creo modeling environment, we don't have the 4-view layout, but within the ISDX environment, we do. So up here in the toolbar, if I click on show all views, right, you see that now takes us to that 4-view environment. So, we have our top view, front view here, isometric view, and then we have our right view, right? So what else is nice about this is we kind of zoom in or focus on the different views that we want to work in. So if I want to work in this front view, right, I can, scale this up more or scale that down, depending, all right? Same thing here for the top view. Right, and if we want to get out of that view, it's very easy. So we just go back up to this toolbar, click on the 4-view layout button, deselect it, and we're back to our normal perspective view. One thing to mention as well is just like we have in the typical Creo environment, we have a dashboard here or a ribbon. So within this, we have the operations group, active plane, the curve group, surfaces group, and the analysis group. So after we've created our curves and surfaces, if you want to review the quality of your surface, you can come in here and you can do a knots, reflection, curvature analysis, basically view the quality of your surface. All right. Also, just like the normal typical environment within Creo, we have the shortcut. So you'll see that if I select either a curve or a surface, we'll start with a curve. If I select this curve, we get a shortcut menu saying, hey, do we want to edit that curve, suppress that curve, create a surface using that curve, drop that curve on a surface, offset that curve, mirror it, copy it, right? And then we have the active plane. So the active plane is basically allow us to, basically it allows us to specify, which plane we want to create our curves on. So at this point, you can see right here, currently, I've got this top plane selected. So if I go to sketch, a curve, and I say curve on surface or curve on plane, if I create my curve, right, it's going to create that curve on that top plane, right? If I want to specify that I want to use that front plane, I can right click or come up here in the dashboard and say set active plane to the front plane, right? Now, if I do that, and I right click, go to create curve, curve on plane, right? I'm now sketching on that front plane, okay? And also, right, it allows us to orient to that plane. So if I have the front view selected, if I right click, I can say, hey, I want to view, the orientation of the front plane. So I can say active plane orientation, and now I'm facing directly straight on to that front plane or normal to that front plane. All right, back to the slides. Okay, so now we're going to get into curve and surface creations. We'll take a look at connecting curves using soft points, copying and offsetting curves, tangency of curves, creating a drop curve, then moving on to surfaces, creating a surface, editing a surface, trimming a surface, using the surface analysis tools, and then also looking at the surface connections. All right, so now let's go to the demo and we'll pull up this guy here. So you can see that, we have a, style feature created with this one curve here, but we also have sketch 1 and 2, and we'll take a look at that later. What's nice about that is, within Creo, you can actually create sketches before you get into your style tool. And if you link your curves within ISDX to those predefined sketches, right, if you link the curves and surfaces to those sketches, once you exit and complete that style feature, if you update those sketches, for example, in this case, sketch 1 and 2, all those curves that you created will update with that sketch. You kind of have this skeleton model-esque kind of environment that you've created. Okay, so let's move right to the style feature. So let's go to style 1. All right. All right, so once we're here, the very first thing is we're gonna take a look at actually using a curve that we created within the style feature. And this feature, this curve CF544 is actually, linked to this sketch 1 that we created up here in the model tree. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take that first curve that we created, copy that curve and offset it. So we're gonna select that curve, and then right here, we'll see copy. Okay, so now we basically want to move that curve up in the Z direction, all right? So to do that, we have to make sure that unlink is selected. If we don't select unlink, this sketch we try to offset is still going to be linked to the sketch which is on that top plane, right? So we have to select unlink, and then we're going to move normal to that surface, right? And then from here, I'm going to go to options, and we'll move this sketch in the, or this curve in the Z direction. So we'll say 8 mils, hit enter, and there it is, right? We can also scale this curve down. So right now, opposite is the option set in scale. We'll change this to center, all right? And now if I do this, if I grab one of these endpoints here on the curve and scale that down, it'll do it uniform based on the center of that coordinate system. So we have center selected. Let's now scale that down. That looks about right. Okay. One thing to mention too, now that we're here is that because we offset it 8 mils, right? We have the option within ISDX. If you specify a curve offset or the length of a tangency handle, you can actually check a box, which will allow you, once you check that box, to outside of the style environment, once you've completed your feature, to basically, use that to control your parameters. So if I go to references here, options, that looks good. All right, so now we can see that we're actually, if I turn on my planes right here, plane display, we offset that curve, copied it, offsetted it, but we're not aligned with that front plane. We want to be aligned to that front plane. So let's go ahead, let's take a look at how far away this endpoint is. Let's grab that, go to distance, grab that endpoint, that front plane. Let me make sure I have the right one selected. That point. So 4.77014. Okay, so let's go back here. In the X direction, negative 4.77014. And now we're aligned to that front plane, so we're good. Let's complete that. And now once you complete it, you can actually edit that curve. So I can right click, edit definition, right? And now you can see that it's showing, that plane or this curve is offset from that top plane 8 mils, right? So what's cool about this is if I select that offset checkbox, click OK, then click OK up here in the dashboard. If I click on the style feature and go to edit, you'll see that offset dimension, because I selected that checkbox, is 8 mils. So now I can change that from 8 to 10 if I want to, right? Regenerate, and there it is. So let's go back in here and change that back to 8, regenerate, and go back into that style feature. Okay, so now that I created that offset curve, I'm going to go in here and actually create a new curve. But before I do that, I'm going to specify, which plane I want to create that curve on. So I'll right click here, set the active plane, or, I could have gone up here in the dashboard and selected that plane. I'll now select that front plane. Okay. And then from here, we'll go to right click, new curve, curve on plane is selected. Now I'll hold shift down. If I hold shift and click the left mouse button and hold, I can snap to these different curves. I can snap to that endpoint. I can snap to this endpoint up here. And once I do that, I can right click and go to edit curve, edit definition, right? So right here is now where I can start to control the tangency or the orientation of the tangency of that curve. So I can select, this top point, for example, and you'll see it's kind of hard to see right now. Let's hide these planes. The tangency handle is in green right here. So what I can do is I can say, hey, I want this right plane. If I right click and hold, I can say I want it to be horizontal. And now it's going to create that horizontal constraint there along this plane. And what's nice about ISDX is you can also create a draft tangent constraint. So if I go here and click on that point, I can right click that tangency handle and say draft tangent and say I want to have a draft tangent to that top plane. We'll select that top plane in the model tree, right? And we'll see that that's now set to 10, but let's modify that. Let's grab that dimension, do a -3. And there it is. So it's kind of a neat feature that within ISDX, you can control the angle or that tangency, or that draft. Let's go in here and let's create another plane or curve on plane. Hold shift, select that point and that point, right click, edit definition. Same thing up here. We'll grab that handle, right click and say horizontal. That point, and we'll say draft tangent to that top plane. All right. So again, just like we were able to select that checkbox for the offset dimension, we can do the same thing for these curves. So if I go into that first curve that I created and I select that first point, if I go to that tangent, if I go to that tangent tab, you'll see that if I change this now from relaxed length to fixed length, if I change that to 4, and I click on that checkbox for a length, that will allow me, once I exit out of this feature, this ISDX feature, and I, edit that style feature on the model tree, I can adjust the tangency length of that curve. Okay, let's complete that. Let's go down to this bottom point here. All right, and then same thing here. Let's go to fixed length. We'll change this to 4. And then draft 2 as well, right? We want to be able, once outside of the ISDX feature to control that draft, right? Let me check this one and make sure that all those are selected. And we'll move to that second curve. Fixed length, we'll make that 4. All right, that's good. Let's select this point here. We'll do fixed length 4. And then draft, check these boxes here. And again, just to show you, what we did there, let's complete exit out of that style feature. All right, and now if we go back to that tree, go to edit dimension, you can see that, those dimensions for the offset for this second curve that we created, the tangency handle length, the draft angle, right? We can change these now. So if I want to change this tangency handle length from 4 to 8, I can do that. There it is. I can change that back to 4. All right, and I can also change that draft dimension from 3. Let's use 12. There it is, and we'll change that back. I just want to show you guys that once you exit out of the -3, once you exit out of that ISDX style tool or feature, you can go back and edit those dimensions if you select those boxes. Let's go back in here. So next from here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a third curve, or second, third, fourth, fifth curve. Let's go into the style 1 feature. Okay, so you can see also, within here that you can create planes. So if you go to internal plane, I've already done it. If you go to internal plane, you can use a plane that was created outside of the ISDX environment as a reference for a new plane. So if I select the datum 2 plane here, you can see that if I edit that I basically offset that plane using the right plane as a reference, and I snapped it to that sketch here. Okay, so now what we'll do is, like we talked about before, we'll go to set active plane, and I'll select the datum 2 plane. So now I know, because that plane is selected, that if I go to curve, right, I'll be drawing or creating that curve on the datum 2 plane. So from here, I'll hold shift and I'll snap to that curve, and here, and I'll right click, I'll go to edit definition to edit that curve. And then what's nice here is that I can also create different points along this curve to change the shape of that curve. So I can right click that curve and go to add midpoint. And once I add that midpoint, I can add another one between the midpoint and this bottom point. Same thing up here. All right, so once I do that, I can grab those points and move those along. All right, and also, just like before, I can adjust the tangency of those different points. So up here, I'll select that point, right click and say normal, and I'll make that normal to the front plane. There we are. And then make sure as well that I have fixed length on for that tangency handle. All right, that's good. And now I'll select this bottom point. All right, and I'll make that draft tangent to that top plane. That's good. Create a fixed length, check that box, then check the box for the draft as well. All right, so now you can see, again, we've created these different planes, and because I checked those boxes, if I go to OK, and I grab the style feature, go to edit, if I checked a box for that dimension, I can go ahead and change that. All right. It looks like some weren't checked. So let's go back to style, edit definition, grab that curve, and make sure that I have fixed length selected for that, and that as well. And now if I select that plane or that curve, I can adjust that tangency length from 4 to 7, right? That changed, I can undo that. Then same thing for the draft tangent, right? I can change that from 3 to 20 if I wanted, and undo that. Okay. All right, so let's turn these planes off here for a second. All right, so now we'll go ahead and create a new curve. And this will just be a free curve. So let's turn off the plane option and go to free curve here to the left. I'll just hold shift, left click and hold, and I'll grab that curve. All right, let's just create that curve first. And I'll right click, go to edit definition. If I click that point, I can click that tangency handle and say, let's make that normal to the front plane. Let's grab the front plane. There it is. And same thing, right? If I go to the tangent tab, I can say fixed length. Let's make that 4 to be even with the others. All right, check that box. And now I'll click this point here, all right, and I'll make that normal. I can right click that tangency handle, or up here, I can change the option to normal, and we'll make it normal to that right plane. And there we are, fixed length, check that box. Okay, so we've now created that, that curve, and we'll create another one. So let's go to curve, create another free curve. We'll connect to that and that there, edit definition. So what's nice about this is with the second curve, I can select that point, I can right click that tangency handle and say, I want to make this curve tangent to this curve before it, right? Then once I'm there, I can adjust, I can click and drag that tangency handle. I can flip the direction of where the tangency is. I can click this back handle here, and now I'm controlling that tangency length, right? Let's grab this guy here and make that normal to the front plane. All right, we can also combine these curves, right? So if I want, you know, this curve and the curve I created before it to be one curve, I can grab that point, I can right click and combine it into one curve. Okay, what's nice as well is that, you know, once I've done that, if I click on this first point here, you know, I've got the tangency length selected, right? I can change that to 7. I can do it over here to the right as well, just to make sure that they're the same. But if I go to the point tab, what's cool is that I can specify with a ratio, right, how far along this point is along this curve that it's attached to. So let's change this to 0.5 to make sure it's halfway along that curve. And just like before, we'll click this checkbox that once we're outside of the ISDX environment, you know, we can change that dimension, all right? So let's go to this point now here, same thing, we'll make that 0.5. Click this checkbox. Let's click this point as well. And it looks like we might have to bump that up a little bit. So let's do 0.7. That looks pretty good. And click on value. All right, and click OK. There it is, right? Okay. So from here, we'll go into creating a surface. So up here in the dashboard, we'll go to surface. And the first thing that we'll do is we'll go to the first direction collector. All right, so we'll left click, grab that top curve there, hold control, grab this curve, this curve, this curve, right? So you can see that, you know, using these 1, 2, 3, 4 curves, we've created a surface, but it really isn't the surface that we've intended to create, because we've specified that we want to use these curves to modify the shape as well. So we can do that by now going to the internal curve collector. We can grab that up here in the dashboard. We can right click, go to internal collector, and now click this curve, hold control, and grab that curve. And now you see that we've used those curves as well to change the shape. So there's one more thing that we have to do, you know, in order for this to be mirrored correctly so that the curvature, the tangency is correct, we have to change this from position to normal. So we'll change that so it's normal to that front surface, right? And there we are, okay? Once we're here, we can also mirror curves, which is nice. So, you know, we can mirror about the front plane, which is right here. So if I grab this first curve, I can say mirror about the front plane, and it creates that curve there, all right? Let's complete that. Same thing with that second curve that we created. We'll say mirror about the front plane. This curve as well. front. Oh, we don't really need that curve, but we'll just mirror it. Front. Okay, and then we have this curve here. We'll mirror that. The final curve is this curve here. All right. So once we're there, we'll do the same thing. We'll just go ahead and create a surface. So let's go to surface up here. We'll grab that curve, hold Control, and then once again go to internal curve collector and grab this curve and that curve, and there it is. We also had these circle sketch to create holes in the surface, and that was actually created on Sketch 2. So what we'll do is we'll use the drop curve tool. So I'll go to drop curve. All right, and I'll choose the curves I want to drop. We'll grab this, here, and we'll drop that on surface here along direction. So if I go in this top view, you can see that we have these two options. We have a long direction, which is basically, just normal to that plane that the sketch curves are on. And then there's normal to surface. That's going to basically change where those drop curves are. Let's complete that. So once we've dropped those curves, from there, we can trim that out of that surface. So let's go to surface trim. All right, and we'll grab that surface and we'll say we'll use these curves to trim, and we'll delete that section. We'll just keep on doing that until we get all four trimmed out. Okay. All right, so now I'm just going to switch to the finished version that I have created. Okay, and now we're going to switch back to the surface analysis. So let's go back here, go back into the style feature. All right, so we've taken a look at the active plane, creating curves, dropping curves on a surface, creating a surface, trimming out a portion of that surface based on the drop curves. And now we have the analysis tool. So you have a few here that we'll look at. We have knots. So if I select knots, I can select this first surface, that second surface. It basically creates these ISO curves on here to view the shape of that curve. There's control mesh as well, and there's both. There's one that we're, I think, all familiar with, or most of us have used before, reflection or zebra analysis. We'll select this surface and that surface to view the quality of that surface. There's curvature. All right, we might have to scale these down a bit. All right, let's increase these 0.075. All right, that helped us basically look at the quality of these different curves. Doesn't look too bad. We look like we have a little bit of a problem here. That's not ideal. All right, so there might be a little bit of work to come in here and smooth this out a bit. And there's surface connection. So if I grab connection, I can grab this surface and that surface. It's basically going to tell me, if I'm in green, I'm good. If I'm in red, not so good. So if I go to G0 position constraint, we're good. with the tangency one selected, we look good as well because we're still in green. And then curvature analysis looks like we're good as well. And acceleration, we're good. So the overall quality of the surface is actually great based on, this all being green. If it wasn't, if the curvature analysis failed or acceleration failed or tangency failed, these curves wouldn't be green, they would show red. Okay. All right, back to the PowerPoint here. All right, so another neat thing about this, and we've kind of looked at it a little bit, but if you actually predefine or if you create a network of sketches, before you create your ISDX feature, if you do that, you can then go into ISDX like we did, and basically create our curves and link them to those sketches outside of the ISDX feature. What that allows you to do is once you've created that ISDX feature or the ISDX surface, and you go back to the Creo environment, if you modify that sketch, it'll actually update the ISDX surface. All right, so let's go ahead and show that. Let's go back to Creo here. Okay, so this is it. This is basically the model that we created within ISDX, right? And all the curves that we created in here are basically linked to these sketches, sketch 1 and sketch 2, these circles that we created for the whole. So it's all linked to there. So if it's all linked to that, and we'll go into these sketches to show it a little bit, right? So the first sketch is just, we have a horizontal line here and a perpendicular line here with dimensions, and we have our curves, right, linked to these sketches or constrained to those, right? And then we have our whole sketch here, right? So because of that now, because that style feature is linked to those sketches, sketch 1 and sketch 2, if I grab sketch 1, right, and I go to edit, if I change that 40 dimension, for example, to 60, right, you can see that ISDX surface is going to update to the dimension of that predefined sketch. Same thing for here. We'll change the 15 dimension to 25. And there it is. It kind of looks like a stingray here. All right. So that's the power of ISDX. Don't let anybody tell you that it's just for the artists, designers that have the artsy way of working, and it's not really anything that you can work with downstream. If you take some time to think about these sketches or the framework for the ISDX surface and set that up, and you link those curves to it, you really can control that surface, right? And then if I change this to quilt, I can grab that surface, I can offset it a little bit, change that there. There's automatic, right? Let's undo that. We can actually select that as well and do thicken, all right, and thicken that surface, right? Let's go to the front view here. And let's turn off controlled fit and turn off the Y direction, all right? All right. One more thing as well is that if I pick this surface, for example, and I find that original surface, there's edit surface or surface edit. If I go there, I can actually increase these max rows for the control mesh, right? And then I can actually grab different points to modify that mesh as well. So if you're working in, mold design, for example, if there's an area that you just have to tweak, you could go to surface edit and grab different points in that control mesh to kind of bump those areas up or down where you might need some more room. Click cancel. All right, there's also reparameterization. So if I go to this surface here, edit definition, I can right click and say reparameterization. Then from here, I can actually change and adjust like the flow of the geometry or those ISO curves along this. So if I can right click here, I can say add reparam curve. And you can see that when I change this, it's going to actually change the flow of that geometry or those curves as well, right? So that can actually help you adjust the quality of your mesh or your surface. Let's change that. We'll add another one here. One here. And one here. All right, that's not perfect, but it's not too bad. All right. Back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so the very last thing that we're going to show here is the Freestyle tool. And what's cool about this, it's, you guys know it's good for concept design, for pushing and pulling and sculpting. If you want to create a quick concept, you can do that with this tool. But what's nice about it, if you have a predefined sketch or a ISDX curve or something, you can actually link that freestyle mesh to that curve to make sure it's aligned correctly. So let's go in there and take a look at that. So just to start off with, let's just create, a basic, let's make sure it's allowing me to, here. Okay, so let's turn on these planes, and just to show you the basics of Freestyle here, let's go into Freestyle. And basically, to start off within this feature, you're going to select a primitive shape. So a primitive shape could be a circle, flat circle, flat square, a triangle. It could be a sphere, a cylinder, or a cube. In this case, I guess we'll start with a cube. So from here, we can grab this plane or this top surface. We can right click and hold and go to extrude, right? And keep on kind of building the shape out. Let's grab that plane, that surface, and extrude that. You can grab an edge as well, or different points. All right, let's grab that face and extrude that. You can subdivide edges to add more geometry. So I can grab these edges. I can right click and split that with one line, and then grab another face and extrude that. All right, let's extrude that once more and extrude this up here. And what's nice about this is once you've done that, let's move these over. Let's grab this loop. We can grab, this face, for example, and that face. We can right click and say join or connect. All right. Basically connect those. So let's do connect there. So you can see we actually created this little hole here. All right. All right. And actually, if you have pictures and images that you want to use to reference in creating your concept, you can do that. So if you go to tools or view, images, all right, you can actually import those pictures of your model, your whatever you're trying to create, and you can actually place those images on different planes and use that as the basis for creating your model. So All right, so now let's actually move to a car design that I created, and we'll take a look at this door. So basically, we have one freestyle feature here. If I go to edit definition, all right, you can see that I have a primitive shape here. So basically what I started off with was a plane, right? So I went into shapes, I went to plane, dropped that in, rotated it, moved it over to where the door needed to be, you know, scaled it. And then from there, I just went in here and let's scale it again. So we're still on scale. Let's bring that in. Okay. And then from here, I just basically subdivided that plane, right? And then from there, I was able to kind of push and pull, grab an edge and drag it out where I need it to be, or drag a point, right? So I basically kind of did that to get what you see here, to get this result that you see here to the right. So let's just delete that. All right. So, you know, I can go in here and define it further. I can grab the edges of this freestyle mesh, subdivide it, all right? And then what it allows me to do is I can define that door further, right? I can grab, you know, these different points, right? And say, hey, you know what? I want to actually bump this out a little bit. Same thing with that point, right? I might want to bump that out a bit as well. And then finally, this point here, right? So you can see that, you know, that was pretty easy to do, you know, and to do that change within ISDX or normal surfacing within Creo, you know, it probably would have taken a little bit longer to do, but within here, you know, it's pretty easy. So let's cancel that. Let's undo that. You know what? Let's go back into that feature. So what I wanted to show here was that we can align that freestyle mesh to a sketch or even a curve within ISDX. So if you look in this model tree here, we have one style curve, all right, that I created on this datum one plane, which is this curve here, okay? And what I can do from here now is I can grab that freestyle one feature, edit that, and align this side of that mesh to that style curve. Let's go here, hold control and grab, it's easy to do. Let's grab these edges here. Just make sure we get them all. And I'll right click and say align, and it will align to that style curve, and then click the middle mouse button, and there it is. Now it's aligned to that style curve. So now if I go back outside of that freestyle feature and then go back in and edit definition on that style feature or that ISDX feature, right? If I change this curve, right, and we'll just do something extreme here. If I modify that, all right, that freestyle mesh, right, also modified along with that style curve because it's linked to that style curve. All right, so let's switch screens here for a second. And I just wanted to mention that you could do the same thing with geometry that's imported. So in this case, you know, I imported an OBJ, went to get import, right, grab that OBJ file, and then once I was in there, I used the reverse engineering Freestyle tool to basically, you know, create a curve on that geometry, that faceted geometry. And once I did that, I offsetted that curve out here to create a gap, and then you're able to actually link that freestyle mesh to that curve as well. So one more thing I wanted to show is that, aside from the style curve, you can link a freestyle mesh to just a normal sketch curve. So we have sketch 1 here. Let's unhide that. All right. So we can see we go back into sketch 1, add a definition on that. All right. I had these different planes, a datum 4 and a datum 3 plane created, and this plane down here as well. And I use these 2 planes up here to basically dimension, this sketch, right? So once I did that, I created a new Freestyle 2 feature. And just like I showed you in the last exercise, I actually linked this freestyle mesh to that sketch curve. So now because of that, I can come in here, right, and say, I want to edit that, sketch 1. And if I change a radius, in this case, if I change that from 0.2 to 0.5, right, that freestyle mesh is going to update with that change. Let's increase that to 1 even. And there it is, right? Let's pull that back to 0.25 now. All right. So, there still has to be some work done too, right? I might have to adjust those like planes as well, right? So I might want to grab, this plane, edit that dimension. Let's go to edit. We have a little bit of a gap here, right? And let's change that from 0.48, to 0.5. And click enter, and now we don't see that gap there, right? So a lot of people think, again, that with ISDX and Freestyle that you really can't control that stuff, but you actually can to a degree. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed this and got a kick on kind of out of these new features that maybe you haven't seen yet. That brings us to the end here to Q&A. So again, my name is Bill. You can contact me on my email at bdrosos@boundarysys.com. You can contact sales as well. And if you want to, go to our site, you can go to boundarysys.com, and we also have a YouTube channel that you can check out. And on that channel, it's great. I mean, I don't even know how many webinars and videos we have, but there's a ton. So really, if there's anything in Creo that you want to know about, that you want to watch just to learn more, feel free to go to our channel and check those out. So let's now use this time to get to you guys. If there's anything you want to ask me, feel free to ask now, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Let's see here. So I can see that Fernando is asking when importing a solid step model, I want to redesign it and select only surfaces. Okay, yeah, so you should be able to do that. When importing a solid step model, I want to redesign it and select only surfaces, then isolate the surface and not show the solid. I can never hide the solid. What version of Creo is this? This is Creo 7. Fernando, yeah, you and I, if you want to, once this webinar is over, feel free to send me an email, and then you and I, even today can take a look at, what you're talking about, or tomorrow or the next day as well. If you have time, you and I can go over it. Yeah, the webinar will be on YouTube, so you can go ahead and view that, Nathan. You demonstrated that you can match the style curve. Are you also able to close the gap and have it match the edges of the existing light blue surfaces of the car body? Yeah, correct. Yeah, so if you want, yeah, you are able to reference and kind of, snap to that freestyle geometry. And again, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you more information on that as well. All right, guys. Yeah. So once again, thanks for joining today. It's been fun. Feel free to send me an email about anything else. I'm gonna go ahead now and end this meeting. Thanks again. Thanks, guys.